So hi, everyone. Tonight we are holding our senior family night. I'm going to go ahead and start with introductions. I'm Danielle Morella. I'm one of the school counselors. I work with students with the last names LL to O. I'm going to let Ms. Hickey Bloom introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Hickey Bloom, and I am another school counselor here at Branham, and I work with the students A through CL.
And Ms. Magana.
Hi, everybody. My name is Isabel Magana. I support students with last name CO through G.
And we have Ms. Vongsa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patty Vongsa, and I work with students whose last name starts with SO all the way to Z.
And we have Ms. Liu.
Hi, I'm Chen Liu. I work with everyone. I help them with college applications and career explorations.
Okay, so because we are doing a Zoom webinar, it does work a little bit differently than a regular Zoom if you use that for your work. We are only able to communicate through the Q&A box. So a few of you have actually tried raising your hand. There's no way for us to interact with you or hear you. And so the only way to basically ask questions throughout this webinar is going to be through the Q&A. We have also disabled the chat. So whoever is not speaking from our counseling staff will be answering questions as they come through. We will be posting the recording. I just saw that question come up. Hopefully by Friday, it will be on our counselor website. And so you can access it there along with the slides of tonight. So just go ahead and make sure that you're putting your questions in that Q&A. We definitely want to make sure that we answer your questions. If you can hold on the questions until we hopefully get to the section that we would be discussing tonight, then that way we can better answer the questions as they come through. So again, this is our whole counseling staff. We were lucky this year to have 6 counselors now just because we have grown in size. So the ones who are not here, they're actually doing our Spanish presentation tonight is Mr. Lopez, and he works with students with the last names H2LL. And then we also have Miss Boyle, who is working with students with the last names P through SM. Our agenda tonight, just like we started with introductions, we'll move to academic requirements, so graduation requirements and what some of their goals would be, and some tips for their senior year. We will talk about financial aid, and then we will move into the post-secondary options. We have this towards the end, so that way, in case, depending on where your students are thinking they're going to go once they graduate, then you can sign off if you would like. So you can either stay for the entire presentation, or as we've gotten through the applications or the post-secondary plans that your students are looking at, feel free to log off at that point if you would like. And then we'll just go over important dates at the end, and just, again, we'll give you our contact information. So just some important updates. Every year we say this, but it's really important that your students are doing their research. The colleges are continuing to change things as we've moved out of COVID-19, especially still with how many essays they're requiring for students, if they're requesting letters of recommendation, if they're requiring the testing for SAT or ACT, or if it's optional. So when we've met with your students one-on-one, we have suggested to them to make sure that if they're applying to any private or out-of-state campuses, they really need to make sure they've looked at what they're requiring and when those deadlines are, because they're going to be different. Just to reiterate again, our CSUs and UCs are not using the SAT or ACT. If your student decides to submit them, they'd only be used for placement in English and math. It would not be used towards the admission purposes at that point. Some of us have been attending some conferences with our college systems already, and the big topic right now is ChatGPT, all of the AI that's been coming out. They are suggesting students can use ChatGPT to essentially make, an outline or bullets of maybe getting started on some of the essays for either private and out of state, or the PIQs, which we'll go over later for our UC system. However, they are very stressing students should not be using ChatGPT to write their essays. They want to hear the voice from your students, and so it's really important that they're not using any kind of an AI system to write their essays for them. It would not be in their best interest. Our UC system has actually now moved up their submission date. Before it was November 1st. Students can actually start submitting the UC application on October 1st. So that application is open right now. Students can be working on parts of the application, working on their personal insight questions, and submit as early as October 1st. And one last change has been that financial aid is actually going to be opening in December. So if you've worked with your students before, if they've graduated earlier, it was always October 1st. Because they're making some changes to both the applications for FAFSA and for CATA, it's going to be December 1st. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Foxa.
Thank you. All right, for the counselor one-on-one meetings, your senior would have met with your counselor or going to meet with your counselor. And what we do here is go over the graduation status, provide them with their transcript to make sure that they are in the right classes so that way they can graduate on time. We talk about options after high school, college application process, financial aid information, and any other information based on the plans that they have after high school. At the end of the month, you will get a letter that lets you know if your senior is on track or not on track to graduate. All the documents and information presented here can be found in our counseling website. Please note that, please read the BHS bulletin that is shared from our principal for important dates and information. All right. Here is our graduation requirements. I'm not going to go over all the little details here, but I just want to let you know that counselors have met with your students every year to review their graduation requirements. Please note that students must have 220 credits in these subject areas to be able to graduate. And here are some alternate ways to earn a high school diploma. One of them is the Boynton Continuation High School. This is usually referred by the counselors here for students who are deficient in credits, so that way they can recover. The second alternate way is CASE for students who are wanting to get their high school or GED. And the last one is the California High School Proficiency Exam. The test dates are typically held every fall and spring semester, and we can give you the website. You can check out the details for the CHIPS. So these are the goals that we want for your seniors. They need to take rigorous courses. They must pass all their senior classes with at least a C or better. They need to create their college list, go on college tours, and visit the ones that they are interested in, and generate at least about 8 to 15 colleges that they want to attend. Please make sure to keep your grades up. Your senior grades are very important. These grades do count, and make sure that you pass all your classes so you can graduate. The complete letter of recommendation process, students were given the blue forms. The blue forms to go over how to complete the letter of recommendation process, the survey for the counselor, teacher, and parent questionnaire. We provided them how to navigate Naviance. Also, they need to get their teacher letter recommendations as soon as possible. If your student is joining sports when they're applying for colleges, they need to register for the NCAA and request the transcripts. They need to gather and complete their college application, and they need to enter all of the information correctly. Last but not least, financial aid and scholarships. They need to apply for FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. If your senior is planning on attending a private out-of-state colleges, they need to make sure that they complete their CSS financial profile if needed, and then apply for scholarships. All right, we'll pass it on to Ms. Chen Liu.
Okay, so before we go to four-year college or two-year college, we need to figure out how to fund your education. So first of all, scholarship. Right now, the best way to search for and apply to scholarship is through Going Merry, which is a free platform. I am actually also on that website. I have a counselor account, so I can monitor our students and see their status. And next semester, starting in January or February, we are going to have updates on the local scholarships. So make sure you keep an eye on our Canvas and also school bulletin. And all seniors need to complete your FAFSA financial aid application, either FAFSA or California Dream Act application. And also for those who are applying to private schools, and some public schools such as University of Michigan, University of Virginia, you also need to complete the CSS profile. Just a reminder, if you're doing early action or early decision, the deadline for your CSS profile is November 15th, which is very different from our FAFSA application. So FAFSA application this year, they're going to make some like very big changes. It will be available in December, and the priority deadline is April 1st instead of March. And you will have to provide your tax information from 2022, okay, 2022, not this year. And if you're thinking about doing some private colleges, but you feel, the tuition might be too high. You don't have to worry too much about that, because many private colleges, they're doing need blind admission, and many of them will meet your financial aid 100%. And also with some private colleges, students are able to negotiate on their financial offer after you're admitted. And finally, we have this Western undergraduate exchange program, UI. There are 160 colleges on this program. So basically, if you're a California resident and you are going to attend one of these UI schools and you meet the minimum requirement, for example, income, GPA, you're going to get a big discount on your college tuition. So next slide. Okay, these are besides our colleges, 2-year, 4-year colleges, these are some other options. Some students will go to vocational school, trade school. Some students will join military, and some of them would take a gap year or find a job to figure out what they really want to do in the future. And then I think it's community college. Oops. Okay. And then when it comes to community college, actually this is one of our most popular destinations for our seniors. There are a lot of benefits of going to a community college. First of all, it's they have the tag program. So basically, if you finish your required G and major requirement, there is a guaranteed admission program at UCs. So right now, the tag program includes all the UCs except for the top 3. Okay, UCLA, UC Berkeley, UCSD. These 3 don't have a tag program. But Wasp Valley College actually has a honored transfer program, which is called TAP. It's between Wasp Valley and UCLA, I think. Yeah. And Promise Grant, this is the grant that will be given to every community college student for the 2 years. So basically, you get free tuition, and you're also getting this money for textbooks, laptop, school supplies, bus pass. And this promised grant doesn't depend on your family income. As long as you submit your FAFSA application, you get this grant. So make sure you fill out your FAFSA. Okay. And in order to apply to the community college, you must be 18 or have a high school diploma before your enrollment. And finally, applications for community college will open in spring. So every year we have West Valley and Dianza. These are two nearby and also most popular community colleges among our students. They're going to be here to host workshops, to visit our classrooms, and help students, walk through their applications. And I will hand it over to Ms. Magalia. Okay.
Okay, so another of the post-secondary options is California State Universities, otherwise referred to as CSUs. There are 23 campuses in our state. GPA eligibility is a 2.5 or greater. Some students within the 2 and 2.4 GPA may be considered. Please know that for the UC and CSU system, the SAT and ACT are not required for admission purposes, but can be used for placement in both English and math. The application is due between they can turn it in between October 1st through November 30th. Something to keep in mind, the same thing with the UC system, is not to procrastinate, to encourage your student to be consistent with their application. What happens is when students wait until that November 30th deadline, that's usually when we're on break for Thanksgiving. And what happens is if there's a lot of students on the site, it tends to crash. So we want students to be able to submit their application successfully and on time. So encourage your student to submit before that deadline. Application fee is $70. The UC system or University of California, there are 9 campuses here in this state. The GPA for eligibility is a 3.0 or greater. Same thing as with the UC system, SAT and ACT are not required, but can be used for placement in both English and math. Personal insight questions are something that your student would need to be working on. I think during our meetings, we ask students to start considering which questions they are going to answer. There are 8 questions. Out of the 8, your student gets to select 4 to answer to their strong suits. Like Ms. Morella mentioned earlier, students are able to submit their application starting October 1st. It's earlier. The application is currently open to students. Some students may be selected at random to submit additional paperwork, such as a transcript or supplemental work. Typically, the school would reach out to the student, letting them know that this is something that they would have to submit in advance. If you don't get selected, it's not a big deal. It's just certain students do get selected. It's at random. Oh, and the application fee is $80. Okay, so the UC eligibility index. So statewide context, what does that mean? The state identifies students that are in the top 9%. The UC system typically is who contacts the students directly to let them know of their eligibility. So if your student was contacted, they were given next steps. For the local, what that means is that students were notified in the spring of last year, their junior year, if they were potentially eligible to qualify. The university system would then contact them again via mail and let them know next steps. Typically, the school that has space is UC Merced. And then we have links here for more information. During our senior meetings, we gave students a packet of information. This would have been a yellow sheet that was attached to that packet. It gives a little bit more information about what it means for a comprehensive or holistic review. It's looking at these factors. Please encourage your student to highlight activities that they have participated in. For those students that have not, been active in sports or other clubs or activities, they can list jobs that they also were working at the time. That could include if they were babysitting, that would count too. Students that are involved in leadership, they can talk about their work that they've done. If they belong to a club and they held a officer position, they can talk about that and the duties that they completed while in that position. The yellow paper is based as an outline with more in-depth information. We do recommend that students have it side by side when they're working on their UC application.
And next up, we are going to talk about personal insight questions, commonly referred to as PIQs. So there's 8 questions. Students have to respond to 4 of their choosing. You want to make sure that you pick the ones that you feel strongly connected to. I went to a UC conference last week, and they suggested and recommended being direct and to the point. Additionally, one common theme as we reviewed really strong PIQs and not so strong PIQs was adding like quantification to your responses. So for example, if you're president of one of our clubs on campus, include how many hours you meet as a club, how many people are in your club. They want to know what type of activity you're overseeing. The other big part was ChatGPT, which Ms. Morella touched upon earlier in the presentation. Again, just to reiterate what she was saying, they do not want students to use ChatGPT to write their PIQs, but it is a great tool to kind of brainstorm ideas and to get a rough outline. They really want to hear your students' voices through their responses. And by using ChatGPT, it gets very generic and they lose some of that edge. So again, avoiding common mistakes. Talking about one campus is a big one that we see. If you're applying to all the campuses, it's the same application. So you want to make sure that you're not writing your answers specific to one school. You want to be a little bit more generic. Again, another one would be generalities, stick to facts and personal examples. Repetition. They said that number 8, the last PIQ, sometimes people will repeat things from the other parts of their application. 8 is really used for if you have an outstanding kind of anecdote or a personal experience, that's where they want to hear it in number 8. They don't want you to reiterate something from what you put in question 1 or somewhere else that could be described in your application. The next section is the comment section. So this is use additional comments box for clarification and expansion of important details. For example, if there was a significant change in your transcript from your sophomore year to junior year, you were going through personal experiences or personal situations in that sophomore year, that's a great area to comment on that and explain in a little bit more detail. The important thing to note is the additional comment section is not required. Again, don't repeat stuff from the other part of your application. So tips for students as you guys are working on your application, carefully complete the application. Make sure you include things that you are doing in your senior year. Oftentimes we see students forget to include things that they're doing in their senior year. Make sure you include that. Another big one was majors of interest. If you have decided, again, you don't have to decide. You're young, you still have time to change your mind. But if you are selecting an impacted major and are asked to select an alternative major, please make sure that the other one you select is not also on that impacted major list. Oftentimes what they're seeing is that students will pick like bioengineering and engineering. They're very, very similar. And in a lot of our campuses, those are impacted majors. Use your transcript. Don't guess about grades. Like Ms. Vongza said, we gave every student a copy of their transcript. If you need another copy or if you have other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your counselor, and we're more than happy to answer them.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about one of the last options is private and out-of-state campuses. Now, their applications are definitely different than our CSU and our UC system. So for those campuses, they all use different applications. It could be where you're applying direct from that institution. It could be the Common App. It could be the Coalition App. That's why I said at the beginning, it's really important that your students are looking to see exactly how they're going to be applying. All of their information is going to vary, what their GPA requirement is, what courses they need to have taken, if they're going to be taking the ACT or SAT. Is it test optional? Is it test blind? Is it back being required? Those are things that your students are going to want to look up. How many essays are being required? If your students are applying to private and out of state and they're using the common application, they will write at least one essay. What we are finding is more of these campuses are adding supplemental essays. So there could be 2 or 3 additional essays depending on the campus they're applying for. So that's definitely something that they're going to want to research and know. One of the other pieces is whether or not letters of recommendation are required or recommended. With how competitive certain majors are and certain campuses are, anything that is recommended, we suggest your students do it. They're not coming out and saying it's required, but I would definitely make sure your students are submitting those materials. When they're looking at the letters of recommendation, and we told our students this when we met with them individually, they really need to look at what kind of letters are they asking for. What we're finding is schools are starting to shift how many letters they're taking, what kinds of letters they are going to accept. So it could be where it could say, we will take 1 teacher or counselor letter. If the campus is having between a teacher or a counselor, I would definitely suggest that your students get a letter from their teacher who sees them on a more regular basis than we do. If a counselor letter is required, we will absolutely write one as well. One of the other pieces that they need to look when they're looking at letters of recommendation is, are they specific? Does it have to be 1 letter from a humanities teacher and 1 letter from a math or science teacher? If they're saying that in their requirements, your students need to make sure that they're asking the right teachers. If it just generically says we will take 1 or 2 teacher letters, then your students can really choose who they want to ask and write that letter. We definitely suggest that they're asking teachers they have a rapport with, that know them, that maybe have gone and seen them in some of the activities or sports that they have participated through at Branham. Whoever they think can write them the best letter, that's who they're wanting to ask. And then again, just making sure that they're reading through the instructions, they know when those deadlines are, and they don't miss them. That is the easiest way for these campuses to say, sorry, you didn't meet those requirements. If they're going to be applying to private and out-of-state campuses, they really need to work with us. And we've stated that in our individual meetings with them. Students really should be providing us their full list, every single campus that they are applying for, so we can really make sure that we've given them the right information. Your students either got 1 packet or 2 packets, depending on where they're applying. And if they are applying to those private and out-of-state campuses, they got 2 packets from us. And all of that has the information in the process of applying, as well as through completing the letter of recommendation process. And they'll use Naviance for a good portion of that. And again, just to reiterate, deadlines are not suggestions. Your students definitely need to make sure they meet them. And we always suggest that they meet them ahead of time. Try not submitting on the day that they're due. Just because, you know, our CSU and our UC system tends to definitely crash, I would say the day before or 2 days prior. The Common App could do the same thing. And so we want to make sure that students have submitted it and there's no question that it's not going to be submitted on time. Again, every school is going to have their own process. We typically will see 3 ways for students to complete their application. The most common is through the Common Application. Some schools are now using the Coalition App, and then some out-of-state campuses will use their own application. So again, just looking to see which one do they need to submit and by when. If they are doing the Common Application, you're going to see that there's that personal statement that needs to be submitted. That's at least 1 question that they're answering, that they're writing an essay on. Any of us counselors can read them for the students if they would like some feedback on what they have written so far. And like I said, many of the schools are adding supplemental. I've seen as many as 3 or 4, depending on the campus that students are applying for. So that's in addition to the 1 personal statement that they would write for the Common Application. Teacher letters of recommendation or the counselor letter of recommendation, those are either going to be recommended or they're going to be required. Look on their website, it will indicate how many and what they're taking. When we met with your students, they got a big blue sheet that basically shows the exact things that they need to do in order to get a letter from either a teacher or from their counselor. One of the things is we've created these surveys for students to complete. It helps us write their letters or teachers write their letters. If a student needs a counselor letter of recommendation, that's when that counselor survey and the parent questionnaire would be required from us in order to write one for them. If they just need a teacher letter of recommendation, then they only need to do the teacher survey. So have your students look to see which kind. If they need all three, it's best to put as much meat and detail in those surveys as possible. That's going to help them have a better letter overall from either their teachers or from us as counselors. Within that process of the Common App and their private and out-of-states, the reason we ask students to put their entire list in Naviance under colleges I'm applying to is to make sure that we can submit their transcripts. Students don't need to request a transcript from us. We will send it based off of the schools that they have listed in their Naviance account. And then their test scores is on your students' responsibility. So if they are going to be submitting their SAT or their ACT scores, they will be submitting that through those websites directly, and they take care of that. That's not something that we will send on our end. And I will turn it over to Ms. Chen.
Okay, so if your student is going to apply to only UC or CSU, you don't really have to worry about these decision plans or admission plans. UC and CSUs only have only one deadline, but many out of state, I would say most out of state schools and private schools, they have different deadlines, different decision plans. So we have ED, which stands for early decision. The deadline of early decision is usually early November. The decision is binding, which means if you are accepted, you will have to go to that school. And it's exclusive, which means you can only apply to this one ED school. One example will be Cornell. Okay, Cornell has ED. And many others like UPenn, Columbia. These are all schools, schools have ED. And EA, which is early action, the deadline is usually also like in early November, but early action is never binding. So if you get into a EA school, you don't have to make that commitment, okay? You can make your decision by May 1st. Is it exclusive? No. So you can apply to many schools with EA, like Purdue, UIUC, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. All these schools have EA. And we have restricted EA or single choice EA. These two terms are essentially the same thing. They are the deadline is also in like early November, but because these are still EA, they're not binding, so you don't have to make that commitment, but they are restricted or single choice, which means they're exclusive. If you do, for example, Caltech, okay, that means you cannot do EA at MIT, okay? I know it can be a little confusing, but yeah, so you can only apply to the REA or single choice EA at one private school, okay? But can you do Caltech and Purdue at the same time? Yes, you can. Okay, and we have ED2, which is the second round of early decision. Everything is the same. It's the same as ED, ED1, but it's just the second round. It has a different deadline. For example, schools like BU, Johns Hopkins, Northeastern, NYU, these are very popular schools, right? These schools, they have both ED1 and ED2. So they have 2 rounds of ED. So you can, some students, if you're really looking at some private schools like these, you may want to utilize this to maximize your chance of, getting into a certain school. And finally, we have already the deadlines from November to February or even later. It's not binding, never binding. It's not exclusive. You can just apply to as many as you want. Example, okay, every school has already regular decision. Next slide. So these are the pros and cons of applying to different decision plans. Understanding these will definitely help you increase your chance of getting into the schools. So first of all, ED1, actually. The good thing about applying to ED1 is that you get early notification. Usually you will get your result back in mid-December. So before Christmas, if you're in, then you can enjoy your winter break. And it does give you statistical advantage, which means the acceptance rate of the ED round is much higher than the RD. And also your application gets a closer look from the admission. But the disadvantage of applying ED is that, first of all, you'd have less time to work on your application. And it's very, very competitive, especially for the top schools. That admission pool is super selective. Your competitors, they're probably all top students from different high schools. And also you don't have the chance to compare financial packages, right? Because for ED, remember we just mentioned it's binding. You have to go to that school if you're admitted. So you don't really have the chance to look at your financial offer. So if tuition is a big thing, for your family, be very, very careful about applying to ED. Okay, and for EA, the advantage is, you get early notification, but you don't really get that statistical advantage. The cons is early deadline. You don't have that much time to work on your application. There's no statistical advantage, but just a reminder here, for students who are interested in some very popular majors, and if your school has EA, it's recommended to do EA, especially if your major is CS or engineering. REA and single choice EA, again, these two are the same thing. So you get early notification, you have early, you also have the early deadline, cutthroat competition. Just to look at, the schools that have this REA or single choice EA plan, like Caltech, right? Like Stanford, it's super competitive. And ED2, by the way, restricted EA or single choice EA doesn't really give you that statistical advantage either. Okay, and ED2, which is our second round ED, you have higher acceptance rate than RD, a little bit higher, but a little bit lower than ED1, of course. You get your, I think usually the ED2 deadline is early January, right? And then you will get your result back in late January or early February, so much earlier than the regular decision. It can be more selective than ED1, because you will probably meet students who don't get into their ED1 schools, but still very competitive kids. I had one student 2 years ago. She applied for the business school Wharton at UPenn. For ED1, rejected. ED2, she did Stern at NYU. So these are some like top kids who didn't get into their first choice schools, and then they will enter the ED2 pool. And finally, RD, you have plenty of time to work on your application. I won't say plenty for UC because the deadline is November 30. And also the UW Seattle, the deadline is November 15th. So if you're looking at these schools, you really have to, work on your application right now. And then you get the chance to compare your financial packages, because by then you will know, you will receive your financial package along with your offer, but you do get late notification. You have to wait until the last minute to get result back. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so kind of back to the letters of recommendation, we wanted parents to also know what we are expecting from the students. So on the blue paper, if your student received that in that meeting with us, if they are applying early action or early decision, which means that they have an application deadline that falls either on or before December 15th, then that process, so adding their colleges, doing the surveys, asking their teachers, requesting their teachers through Naviance, and then meeting with Ms. Chen before coming to us, that is due Friday, September 29th. It needs to be in our hands on that date, so then that way we can make sure that we don't miss their deadline of getting their letters in or submitting transcripts. So again, that will be Friday, September 29th. If your students are doing regular decision, which means they have a December 15th or later deadline, then they are going to be submitting that on Friday, October 25th. So same process, they just have a little bit more time to complete those surveys and ask their teachers before submitting that. But either so the end of September or the end of October, depending on when your students' deadlines are for the schools that they are applying for. And then we kind of just put together a chart for you so you could really see what are most of our systems asking for. So really and truly, there's going to be an application for each one: community college, CSUs, UCs, private and out of state. The ones that are going to require more of those documents, it's going to be the private schools and the out of state campuses. So really, we would just be submitting a transcript at the end. Once your student has graduated, they will tell us where they're going to be going, and we would be putting together those transcripts to be sent usually by like June 15th, depending once we've gotten the grades from our teachers at that point. Now, we do find that sometimes students might be randomly selected from our CSU system and from our UC system to submit some additional materials. One of the big things that it's important that you and your students understand, the colleges do not reach out to us. They reach out to the student through their college portal, which Ms. Magana will be going over in a couple slides. That's where they're going to reach out and say, we need your transcript and we need it by January 15th. Your student needs to come and let us know. We don't submit those transcripts to the CSUs and UCs unless they are randomly asking for it. So it's really important that your students come and they let us know. We have seen it from some of the UCs, and I have seen it from some of our CSUs like San Francisco, Sonoma. In the past, Monterey's done it a couple times. It is not a disadvantage if your student is not randomly selected. It is truly random. And so if they are asked for additional materials, make sure that they are submitting that and they're submitting it by that deadline. Okay.
So the next slide, we're going to go over sending transcript. So again, as we've stated before, CSUs and UCs do not require a transcript when applying. So you don't have to request them in Naviance. If you've already done that or your student's already done that, you can go ahead and delete that request. Common application in schools that require a school report, we will automatically send those by the due dates. And then please, again, do not request transcripts on Naviance. We're going to send those as well by the due dates. Again, this is already touched on, but sending test scores is just a reminder. Please make sure you do your research to determine if a school is test required or test optional. If they are test required, then please use this chart. If the school is test optional, they have the option to send the SAT or ACT score if they are confident in it, if they liked how they tested on the SATs.
Okay, so after your student submits their applications, if, the admissions will let them know what is their status. So provisional admission basically means that they are admitted for the time being until all the required documents, including their final transcript, any other progress information that they need, is submitted to the Office of Admissions of that school. If your student fails a course or doesn't obtain the letter grade that the school requires, then their eligibility may be void. They may void the admissions to that university. So maintain your grades throughout. Grades do matter senior year. So making sure that your student is being, passing all their classes and submitting all their work up until the very end. Okay, so after the application, schools will reach out to your student directly, letting them know to set up an account, or otherwise known as a portal. Basically, this portal is used as the account with the school to let them know if there's pending items, to-do items, or items that need action on their behalf. Students are responsible for setting up this account and also for checking it regularly. We recommend that at least once a week they do diligence and check all their portals for the schools that they have created one for, and that they know that if there's something that needs to be submitted to the school, that they work in advance and not wait until last minute. They do say, for example, if they're requesting a mid-year report, a transcript, or any other paperwork, they give the student a deadline. So the student is responsible for making sure to submit that information in advance of that deadline. And then if you have any questions regarding, pending status or information that you've submitted and whether or not that information has been reviewed, the student would be responsible for contacting the school directly to know what is their status with that paperwork.
All right, here are the important upcoming dates. We have October 3rd at 6:30, a webinar, reducing college costs, advice for parents of high school students. Steve Shapiro will be hosting that. We also have a virtual financial aid night, November 28th at 6:30. Cash for College 2 nights, Tuesday, January 15th at 5, and Thursday, February 15th at 5. And please note that the CSU UC applications are due November 30th. All right. And here are, these are QR codes for additional resources for academic success, mental health, and college and career information. Then I'll pass it along to Ms. Morella.
So we just wanted to leave you with our contact information. That last slide, if you went to the academic success, that'll bring you directly to our counseling website. If you go under the grade level area to 12th grade, that's where you will see this presentation. You'll also see all of the documents that we gave to your students as well. So in case they haven't come home and showed you it, you have access to it as well from the website. And so if they lost any of it or lost the blue paper, they can always access it through there. And so I will have the recording up and the presentation up by Friday. And so if you have any additional comments that come up, or you had specific questions for your individual student, you can always email us and reach out. We're more than happy to help with any part of the process. We really want to try and help and make this as smooth as possible for our students that we're working for. As we know that basically once they leave us, it can be very intimidating. And so as much that we can advocate and support for them, that's what we're here for. If there's any additional questions, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording at this point. And thank you all for coming.